Welcome, everyone. We thank you for being here. Seder means order, but really the idea of Seder nights is that things are out of order. It's so clear we look at our state, how out of order things are here. When the biggest bullies in our kids' lives work for the Missouri state government. And so we show up as our tradition calls us. We show up as we were taught, to cry out, to call out injustice when we see it. I was talking with the second graders a few weeks ago. We were talking about Mi Chamocha, the story of liberation, the story of Passover. And I asked them, what does Mi Chamocha mean? What's the real message? And one of these second graders looked back and he said, when you see someone being bullied, stand in front of them. I just loved that, right? Like, how much of life is that not the message of? When you see someone being bullied, stand in front of them. So we're here today to cry out. Because it's trans kids. Kids are being bullied in our state. So we start by singing. It goes like this, just a few words in Hebrew. Olam chesed yibaneh, we will build this world from love. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yibaneh. We must build this world from love. We must build this world from love. If we build this world from love, we will build this world from love. Because if we don't build this world from love, Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai.
Welcome. You grace our space with your presence. You who have come to our protest Seder to lift up our beloved trans community, you grace this space. There is no higher mitzvah than radical hospitality, creating a welcoming and affirming space. At the opening of the tent is where all transformation for the good becomes possible, and it is our job to keep the tent open. God is drawn into our story by suffering, the groaning of the people who are enslaved by the oppressive systems that others have created to control them. But the story takes its turn at the burning bush, where Moses has an awakening that reveals his destiny, his path, his essential identity. When it is clear to himself who he is, Then he can be a blessing to others. So this Seder celebrates the awakening of our trans, non-binary, gender, and questioning youth. We are here during this sacred time of Passover to lift up our voices to make sure that we protest and crush any and all oppressive systems and legislation that dares to limit freedom, dares to keep our youth from all they need to be free. Passover is also about leaving. Mitzrayim, a Hebrew word that means from the narrows, represents not so much a geographic location that we have to leave, but a state of mind from which each of us seeks liberation on our way. It is fitting and timely context through which we learn from the challenges of queer and gender variant friends and all of the challenges that they face in many areas of their lives. So Rabbi Nachman says that to fulfill the mitzvah of Passover, we have to take those first steps to freedom and lift up the matzah, the moror, and the Pesach. So here is the matzah. This is some serious matzah. This is the matzah shmura. So the matzah. We had to leave quickly so the bread did not rise. But this is also the bread with no ego. The matzah reminds us with every bite that in our bones we know and remember oppression. Every one of us has inherited trauma. Every one of us, because we all had to leave something narrow, some slavery, something that oppressed us behind, right? We all have that in our bones. We know and remember oppression. In our genes, we know that we cannot ever do to others what was done to us. And so with this matzah, this bread with no ego, we vow to make sure by eating only stuff that's not puffed up for 8 days, we make sure that we don't get puffed up. And we vow with this matzah to make sure that this space will never be a gendered space. And now the maror, the bitter herbs. It's kind of funky from my Seder. But this is the maror, the bitter herbs we taste to remember that we experienced the bitterness. And the only way to redeem that is to not become bitter ourselves, but to become better. We mix the maror with the sweet harosis to remind us that we can be better, that there is always something, even in the bitterness, that will push us to fight for what is right. We eat the maror to remember the bitter experience of so many trans people who had to hide their identities at the doors of their faith traditions and we vow with the maror today to grow our non-gendered spaces and make sure that faith communities are open and affirming. This is the Pesach. For vegetarians, the Talmud tells us we're allowed to use beets. We don't have to use the shank of a lamb. So beets are bloody. I guess that's what it's about. So this is the Pesach. This is the sacrifice. We took its blood to mark our doorposts to protect our children from the angel of death. Each of us willing to sacrifice for the common good, the well-being, the self-esteem of all of our children. Every child is celebrated for who they are and who they are becoming. Pasach in Hebrew also means to jump or to leap. And so the Pesach also teaches us that each of us must jump into this story. Sometimes it means going to Jefferson City. Sometimes it means trying to be more like Illinois and other states that are affirming. Sometimes we have to leap into the story to hold the space and protect our trans and non-binary and questioning youth for as long as they need us to do so. Let no one dare to limit their freedom on our watch. Let no one legislate their futures for them or their parents. This Pesach draws us into the story and says this is all of our story. Until we are free, not one of us absolutely cannot be free, right? And finally, in addition to the beautiful pomegranate that we have learned about and now will become part of our Seder plates, remember the orange. You know, the real story of the orange was kind of co-opted, and it became a story about a woman belongs on the bima like bread on the Seder plate, but that's not where it started. It started with a lesbian who was being challenged. And a rabbi's wife actually said, "Ugh, a lesbian belongs on the bima like bread on the Seder plate." But those lesbians, they were not going to put bread on the Seder plate because, like who does that? That's the whole point, right? So they came up with another beautiful symbol, the symbol of the orange. Why? Because this orange is so beautiful. When you open the orange, there is never a section missing. It teaches us that every section, every piece, every part of our human family is necessary. Every one as essential as the next. And it's so sweet. So how do we get from here to there? How do we get from, and things are getting better, at least we're talking about this, right? We know what we have to do. We know what's right. How do we get from here to there? Well, the Seder also gives us another teaching about the 4 cups. The 4 cups of wine or grape juice in the Seder come from each of the promises. The first promise says, I will take you out. Why? Because you can't free yourself. You have to have help. Getting out of Egypt, we needed help, right? So that's the first promise in the first cup. The second one is, I'll save you. What does it mean to be saved? Well, we could take the people out of slavery, but it took a lot to take the slavery out of the people, and that's what it means to be saved, right? The third one is, I'll redeem you. Redemption in Judaism is about being community, not leaving anybody out, taking the margins and moving them to the middle, making sure the door is open enough for everyone. And then the last promise, the last cup of wine, I take you to be mine, God says to us. So no matter how tough the journey is, no matter how challenging, what we like, what we hope, what we pray for, is that nobody loses faith that the good in us will win. So we're going to begin the journey through the 4 cups and the rest of the Seder by asking Rabbi Micah to come up and give another little teaching about our 4 cups. It's so good to see you. It's been like so long.
It's been forever.
I know. Good to be in spaces together.
Yes. Amen. Chag Sameach. I'm Rabbi Micah. I use he, him, and they, them pronouns, and I am in awe of the power of this space. So, Rabbi Talvi shared this teaching about the 4 cups and the 4 promises. But something that really jumps out at me is that these 4 promises, in each one of them, we hear a verb. Right? God says, I will take you, I will bring you, I will rescue you. And they're active. And to me, this reminds me that this work for liberation, it's not passive. Right? We don't sit and wait for it, but we act for it. And we're going to hear this number 4 again and again and again throughout the Seder, and that makes me think of something that my activist ancestors taught me. This concept called the 4 I's of oppression, the 4 I's of liberation, the letter I, right? Not the I that is in our face. And they teach that oppression and that the work we do to counter it, it's using 4 tools. Ideological, right? There are people out there who want to teach us the ideas that trans people, that we're less than or not as deserving. And they want to build institutions, right? Oppression is institutional. It's how things are done and who's allowed in. And they want to teach interpersonal unkindness between one and the next. And sometimes we live in that long enough, we might start to make that internal, right? We hear, we read, we encounter messages about ourselves again and again and again. It takes a lot of work not to let those messages take roots. And so, throughout this Seder, as we encounter these 4 cups, we can think of an action we can take for each of those 4 that's going to counter those messages. It's going to be active work for liberation. We meet ideological oppression with ideological affirmation. We believe concretely and actively that trans and non-binary and gender-expansive people embody the divine in this world and deserve dignity and safety and love. And we commit to show that ideology in our actions. And we meet institutional oppression with institutional change. We commit to examining the institutions that we're a part of, to going down to Jefferson City, to looking and listening around us to what can be done to serve all of us. And we meet interpersonal oppression with interpersonal allyship and self-advocacy. We always have the power, those of us who are trans and those of us who are not, we always have the power in those moments interpersonally to teach, to confront, to stand in front of the bully. And we need internalized oppression with love and with liberation. We commit to a process of unlearning the stereotypes and the messages that we may have been steeped in. We commit to building systems of mutual accountability and mutual celebration and mutual care, because our queer and our trans and non-binary and gender-expansive selves deserve better.
Now you're in for a real treat. We have 4 teens that are going to give us their vision for these 4 cups of wine. Thank you for setting that up so beautifully, Rabbi Micah. And our first will be Fiona. Fiona's a rock star that also teaches in our school. So these are the role models that our children have.
Hi guys, I'm Fiona. I'm first of all just so honored to be up here. When Rabbi Susan asked me, I don't know, I'm a bit nervous. This is awesome. I just want to say also that you can feel the energy and the power in this room, and I love that the Seder plate is now becoming a beautiful cornucopia of fruit and fun things and beets. I'm vegetarian, so that was nice to hear. So I kind of wanted to, my statement or my verb, like Rabbi Micah said, was that we will grow to learn how to love truthfully. So specifically just with, sorry, I'm kind of nervous. Specifically just with true to ourselves and true to loving other people. And I just think that everyone in here has found some truth in how and why they're here, whether they're LGBT or an ally or just hanging out because CRC is fun. There's always truth and there's power in truth, and maybe that's the energy that I feel, but just to be able to find comfort in the freedom and the truth that that people hold. And so I think going forward, being able to teach children and to teach our friends and our families and maybe even like older people that there's power in the truth and there's love in truth, and that makes for a beautiful cornucopia of wonderful people. So yeah, that's Sorry. Can I get to this one? I like this one.
We'll all say
Should I finish it, or is it just a sip? Can I take it back to my seat?
So, when I first realized that I was the parent of a trans kid, everyone said, "Do you know Rabbi Ari Mafik?" When Ari found out that we were doing this event, Ari lives in Chicago, she's a rabbi in Chicago. Ari found out about this and said, "I need to come." I said, "Are you sure?" It is such a schlep. And she said, "I need to come because if they were doing to my kid what they're doing to your kid in your state, I would want you to be there." And when we moved this from being in the middle of the day in Jeff City to being at night at CRC, and Ari had to change their flight, I said, "Ari, come on, we'll find another time." And she said, "I want to come." And when there was no flight out tonight and she had to stay the night, she said, "I need to be there." So we're very grateful for you being here, Rabbi Ari Mafik.
Well, thank you all for being here. I'm speaking to you as a parent to represent, all parents of trans kids, I think, around the country who feel scared and feel alone, and because of what you're doing and because of you being here, it speaks volumes. It makes people feel that that there are people who will stand up with us and be there for us to protect our amazing children. So what an honor to be here, and thank you all for caring and for being here. So I get to talk about these 4 children who we read about in the Passover Haggadah, in the Passover book that gives us our steps for this ritual meal. And these 4 children have varying interest, really, in Passover. They're described as wise, wicked, simple, and even unable to ask. And our tradition tells us that we must honor all of the different ways that they learn, all of the different ways that they're approaching this meal, this experience. And so we explain the whole Passover story differently to each child. But the Hasidic rabbis taught that, in fact, these 4 children are not individual characters, but they're actually different manifestations in each of us. And so we've all been clueless at times, rebellious, wicked. And so we can see these 4 children, these different aspects of these 4 children in us, if we're honest with who we are. But can we see the experience of transgender children in us? Have we ever felt left out, insecure, scared, vulnerable? And have we been brave, fabulous, shown resolve and determination? If we want to see bravery, all we have to do is watch a trans kid get on a school bus as their authentic selves. But where does this understanding leave us? The Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim, which we understand to mean narrow places. We have to escape from narrow places to find the expansive, open, promised land. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, because we are our neighbors. We are the 4 children, struggling to understand our ancient yet ever new tradition, Trans kids are our kids. Their experience is our experience. We have to see ourselves in them. When we open our eyes in this way, may we only know freedom.
We're going to sing Dayenu. But what we'd like to ask you to do as we sing Dayenu is kind of think about, Dayenu, if we only had this, wouldn't it be great? So we can think about it in two ways. If we just had this, it would be enough. But not quite. So let's think about what else we need. What do we need so that we can really sing Dayenu? All right? Sing a little. Think about what else do we need?
So we've heard about Mitzrayim, the narrow places. So we'll sing the first line of Dayenu. Ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim. If only we'd come out of Egypt. If it had only been that, if we only were on this trail, this freedom walk, it would have been enough. Ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. So what are some of the things? What are some of the things we're feeling grateful for? What are the pieces of trans joy for us to share? I'll start, which is trans Twitter. If you're not on trans Twitter, it is a glorious place. No, truly, some of the nicest, kindest, most genuine, loving human beings I've ever met. I have met through there. Fiercest. What else? Say it again. I don't know seahorse dad. What are seahorse dads? Amazing. Seahorse dad? I've never heard that. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Other moments of trans joy. Yeah. Hey, top surgery next. A refuah shlema, quick and full healing. Really exciting. And I saw someone over here. The summer camp. We have, if you don't know about Camp Indigo Point, which is going to live at the new Ashrei Foundation, we started it 4 months ago for transgender, expansive, and LGBTQ youth. We thought we were going to get 20 kids from around St. Louis. We have no more beds at 93 campers. We have 55 kids on the wait list. We got 135 applicants for 29 staff spaces. We got 20 PhDs who wanted to come be counselors this summer. We've given out $12,000 in scholarship. There are kids coming from Alaska and Idaho and Wyoming and Wisconsin and Texas and everywhere you can think of. Yeah, amazing. Dayenu.
Anything else?
Hey! How about for these amazing pronoun pins that Autumn put together? Which we hope everyone, if you didn't take one, you'll take one and you'll take it home as an excuse for us to order another draft. We have revisions for the next draft, so you know. It's an amazing community. It's an amazing community.
And if you haven't seen the floor in the Oneg, there's a messianic figure. You know, Jews, our Messiah didn't come quite yet, but we do have a messianic figure that is meant to will be born on the holiday of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the saddest day of the Jewish year. But the Messiah will be born, and the messianic figure on our floor is a trans tattooed person of color. So that's what the Messiah is going to look like.
Ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, dayenu, last time, dayenu, 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 dayenu.
Well, we've been doing this a long time, Philip. We kind of started opening this heart of the world together in 1981, early 1980s, when the AIDS epidemic was scaring people and hurting people, and this community said, not on our watch. So it means so much to see so many people have the chutzpah to come out and be here in all of your beauty. And now Avram is going to come and tell us about their vision for the next cup of wine. Is Avram here? Yeah, there's Avram. There you are.
Thank you, okay. First off, I'm sorry for ruining the positive vibe. Like, everyone's speeches were so funky fresh and just so loving. But I am very angry. I have never met a fellow trans kid who has not either tried to commit suicide or who has not self-harmed. And I mean, like, statistically speaking, both are to be expected. And I don't have to tell you the statistics to tell you what I have seen. Every trans kid has gone through the feeling of knowing your government, your peers, your family, and your school does not want you. I mean, hopefully not family, though. I think everyone in here is pretty chill. Anyways, when I came out in 5th grade, I quickly realized the world was not as progressive nor as kind as the 21st century should be. Many of us go to school and get tossed around like dirt for being one of those freaks. We go to school and have teachers turn a blind eye to anything our fellow students inflict onto us. Most trans kids can't go home to an accepting or supportive family, making us safe nowhere. Now Missouri trans kids will not be felt safe and protected by their own government. We already have so little. Now we are seeing our own state pop up with bills banning us from playing sports or denying us access to life-saving hormone therapy. How is this generation supposed to survive if every turn we make is filled with the Pharaoh's lackeys trying to kill us? The world is choking on plastic and poison, and all our officials can talk about is children's gender and self-autonomy. I don't want to have to continue seeing and hearing about trans children becoming statistics. I don't want to have to keep saying to everyone that we matter. We matter. We need the rights to play sports. We need the right to go through the already difficult process of doctors and parents and therapists letting us go on medication that will finally let us recognize ourselves in the mirror. If we cannot have the basic rights of self-autonomy or playing soccer, then I know and am terrified they will only get worse. We all know that Passover is about liberation, and I'm begging you to make sure that we are included in it. And to any trans person in here, you are divine and you matter. L'chaim. That's
why we're here. That's why we're here. Thanks, Avram. Perfect. Dryden? What do you say? No, not yet? Okay. Autumn. Autumn? Is Autumn going to give another cup? Yeah. Yeah, that's you. Thanks.
We have 3 young people and Autumn.
And Autumn.
Once upon a time, I was younger than I am. Hi, everyone. My name is Autumn. I work at CRC as the Director of Communications and Online Community. I'm the one running the live stream. Hi, everyone. And today I brought a poem because I don't know about y'all, but I'm having a hard time finding my own words in my body, so I brought some beautiful words from someone else. And this is a poem from, I believe their name is Daniel Lavery, from, I think the book of poetry is called Something That May Shock and Discredit You. And this poem is called, And His Name Shall Be Something Very Hard to Remember. Thank you, Avram. Avram gave me this poem, so I brought it. Okay. From Genesis 32:28. And he said, Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. And they said to him, It's not that we don't like the name Israel. It's just that we've always called you Jacob. We're so used to it. And he said to them, Right, no, I get that. I do know that you've always called me by that name before. I hadn't forgotten. I'd been used to it too. I really appreciate you bearing with me. And they said, Well, first things first, you should definitely know that we're going to get it wrong sometimes. And he said, Of course, I figured that. And they said, We just really want to stress before moving on to any other topics that we're going to forget it a lot. We're going to use the old name. That's the first thing we want you to know. And now that you've made your request, just know how badly we plan on carrying it out. And Jacob said, Okay. And they said that a lot. And everyone else said that too, with an astonishing regularity upon hearing the new name. So eventually, when Israel, told anyone about it, he started saying it for them too, to save time. My name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for I have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed, but I don't expect you to get it right all the time. I know it's a big change, and I totally understand it'll take some time to adjust. And some of them said, What if we came up with a new name that meant both? Sort of like in between until it feels more natural, like Israel or Jazriel. Yeah, we're gonna call you Israel. To which Israel said, Okay, if you think it'll help. And they said, Thanks for understanding. It's just that this is really hard for us too, you know. In some ways, it's like you've died. To which Israel said, In which ways? They said, Please don't get defensive. And some of them took, It'll take some time to adjust, as they heard it as forever, which had not been what Jacob, Israel, sorry. It's just that my brain is so used to saying Jacob because you really are Jacob in my brain, just Jacob who has done something real weird these days. It's not what he had been saying at all. And some of the others said Israel most of the time, and Jacob some of the time, exclaiming, oh my God, Israel, sorry, oh my God. I'm so sorry, after each accidental Jacob, such that each time was more noticeable than the time before. And Israel found himself saying, It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's totally fine. Don't feel bad. I didn't even notice. Jacob is fine. I honestly already liked Jacob better anyways. So I wanted to share this because while the character Jacob is obviously not in our Passover story, I think this poem still speaks to the experiences of so many queer people and queer Jews trying to carve out our space authentically in this world. For us Jews, Israel is both an ancestor and the name of our people as a whole. The name means one who wrestles with God. And what does it mean to wrestle with God? There are lots of different ways that the queer and trans experience looks, feels, and presents itself, but wrestling with God feels like an accurate description. To sit with yourself in the middle of the night, alone, in the dark, and knowing what you know about yourself. Wrestling. Deciding to claim it, deciding how to wear it, how to dance with it, how to celebrate it. L'chaim.
You know that one of the most important parts of the Seder is when we dip our fingers into that last cup, right? Into the cup. And we spill a little bit of that wine onto the cloth or the table, the plate. And we feel the plagues. Now, something so interesting about those plagues, when you think about it, it was not until the people in power suffered that things changed. It wasn't until Pharaoh lost his own son that he let the people go. And not that we wish harm to anyone, not that we wish anyone should suffer. But until we realize that if one person, like Avram said so beautifully, is that angry and that hurt and that afraid for the life of your friends and the people you know, none of us, we all suffer. None of us should be able to sleep at night. So we're going to have one more segment, and this is about the plagues that we have to experience today. Remembering, though, that when the plagues got so bad, things really did begin to change.
The first thing you learn, really the first thing you learn when you love a trans young person and when you live in a red state is that you have to protect them from their government. The first people I told that my kid was trans, the first people were the members of the Missouri House Committee that was hearing a bill targeting him. Before we told grandparents, before we told teachers, the first people were those committee members. The first people I told were Pharaoh. There's a story in the Zohar, our ancient mystical text, that says that Pharaoh's palace was like a snake that coiled up into itself. And that the further Moses would go into the palace, the closer into the supernal depths of evil he would get. There's not much in Jeff City other than the palace. You literally get off the highway at Kingdom City. It was a pastor friend who pointed that out in the car. It felt like entering Pharaoh's palace the first time I walked in 3 years ago. The depravity, the homophobia, the transphobia, the racism, the white Christian nationalism. It seeps from the walls. You can sense it in the hallways of the Capitol when you look at the way that men leer at the bodies of people who are different than themselves. You see it in the eyes of queer staffers, in their trauma, and in the weariness and the exhaustion of the Democratic electeds. For folks who don't know, by the way, I think it was 5 years ago, Senator Jill Shoup, already in her 60s, led a 39-hour filibuster to stop that bathroom bill. She's a hero, and people should know that. And so we keep going. We go again and again on this terrible pilgrimage there to beg the pharaohs of the Missouri legislature to let our children go, to let go of our children. We go back year after exhausting year. We drive 2 hours so that we can beg them for 2 minutes. And they're doing it again tomorrow. They're hearing the medical ban in the House tomorrow in committee, and they tell us today that it's happening tomorrow at 8 a.m. It's trauma for these kids when they go. I mean, it's real trauma. It's the trauma of listening to elected representatives look them in the eye and say, "Do you need help? Are your parents grooming you? Are they pedophiles?" It's the trauma of senators, state senators, looking at 12-year-olds and asking them what their genitalia looks like. It's trauma for us adults, too. I've started having a panic attack every night before I go there. Every night. I wake up terrified about what happens when they come for my family. And it's happening In Texas and in Alabama, there are government goons who are showing up at the doors of loving families and opening up child abuse cases against their parents. These are kids like my kid. These are families like my family. What happens when this comes to Missouri? What happens when our pharaohs finally pass one of those bills? How quickly would we need to flee? Is Illinois far enough? What would happen if we crossed the border to come to synagogue or to take our kids to their amazing, loving, affirming Jewish school? What happens when these same people who control our state once again control all the levers of our federal government? Illinois is first, we've decided as a family. Then Canada, if we can get in. And Israel, if we have nowhere else to go. I need you to understand this. Every family, every loving family of a trans kid in a red state is up at night having these conversations. You can tell the parents in this room because they are nodding right now because they are having these conversations. In every Seder, in every Passover Seder, we talk about the 10 plagues, but I think we often misunderstand them. We think of them sometimes as the bad things in our world, as the equivalent of racism and transphobia and misogyny and climate change, but the plagues, as Rabbi Susan said, are not the bad things in our ancestors' world. They were their tools of resistance and their tools of liberation. And so we must be the plague bringers and the truth speakers. We must never let the fascists and the bigots and the bullies win while we still have power and while we still have breath. We will be the voice in the room that lovingly demands that trans kids be protected and respected. We will be the voices in Pharaoh's palaces, demanding that they let go of our children. We will be the voices in classrooms and in schools and in synagogues and in churches and in grocery stores that saves trans kids' lives by affirming their existence and human dignity. We will be the friends and the parents and the teachers who every trans kid knows has their back. And we will commit that we will be in jail before a single loving, affirmed trans kid is taken from their family. These are our plagues. These are our tools of resistance and liberation and sacred protection. Whatever we're doing, we have to do more. We have to protect trans kids. So maybe we've got a lot of clergy here. Maybe we'll invite all the clergy to come on up and everyone to rise physically or spiritually. And if you're feeling comfortable for COVID reasons or other reasons to put your arms around each other, we're going to give each other a blessing.
Wonderful.
So I better explain for those who are not CRC regulars. We're going to do the Birkat Kohanim, the 3 lines, may you be blessed and keep safe. But we're going to turn it over to you all, the 3 of you, to offer a translation, an interpretation, a blessing. It can have deep connection to the words we said in Hebrew, or it can be inspired. So here we go. Yivirechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
kids. We pray that the hearts of those pharaohs may be turned, that they may repent and rebuke this evil.
Tori?
We pray for the day that these trans children get to grow old and that they get to go on and live incredibly ordinary lives, not defined by running to Jeff City, but defined by things like taxes and picking the right elementary school for their own children.
Amen.
And playing sports.
Yeah, and playing sports.
May you know always that you are beloved.
Amen.
Amen.
And Rabbi Randy?
Take us home. Thanks to everybody who showed up today. Thanks to everybody who is fighting for what's right. And thanks to everybody who participated today. And we're going to keep doing this. We'll find ways to keep reminding each other that we are divine and that God, whatever God is, loves every single one of us. Right?
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, ready? Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Yeah, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Speaking truth to power, speaking truth to power, I'm gonna let it shine. Speaking truth to power, I'm gonna let it shine. Speaking truth to power, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Last time this little light of mine, you clap your hands, stop your feet, sing really loud. Daniel's got the 2 and 4. I see your light, every single one of you, I see your beautiful light. This little light of mine, come on, I'm gonna let it shine. Sing it out. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Love you all to life, as my friend Katie says. Love you all to life.